Well, hey everybody, it is Romania Black, and the ambiance for this penultimate episode of Ping Pong is quite on the nose. Because as I'm recording it today, it has been raining all day long, this cold, drizzly rain. My hair is just, there's no helping it. And I thought today, I was like, man, what incredible weather to watch ping pong in, because I am one getting an ominous feeling about this semi penultimate episode, but also I don't want ping pong to end. I literally, episode 9 is coming out on Patreon this week, and my scheduling's been very tight, so I've not been able to record very far ahead anymore. But I kind of have been holding off on ping pong because I don't want to finish the series. I just want to wait to the last minute because I want to savor it, because once this episode of next week is done, we are through with ping pong, and I'm gonna have so much to talk about next week about it, I'm sure. But I really am not ready for that. And I'm very sad about it, to be honest with you all. So, the frustration of it all, literally. But yeah, so I'm pretty excited though to dive into this episode. I do have a lot of comments I want to talk about before we begin. But before we even start the comments, I want to go ahead and give a super shout out over to Patreon, to our philanthropy tier. Right now, we have been doing sports polls. As you watch this recording, there will be a poll for the sports anime on Patreon that is replacing this series. So if you have $1 to spend, you can go over to Patreon. There's going to be 4 series to vote on, and one of them is going to win, and it will replace this series 2 weeks from now. Crazy. But the philanthropy tier on Patreon has been pulling in the work, because we've been doing this March Madness sports bracket on YouTube and Patreon. And honestly, in this Sweet 16, the polls leading up to the Elite 8, everybody on YouTube and everybody on Patreon was kind of in agreement. They had their choices. But this Elite 8, there have been ties. There have been Patreon choosing one show and YouTube choosing the other. And the philanthropy tier, they get the special perk on the Patreon channel of, if there is a tie, they get to break it. And if that tie doesn't get broke again, then it's up to me. But they get to break it first. And so usually that's what happens, is that the philanthropy tier will break the tie. So if you are on the philanthropy tier, thank you so much. You've helped to determine the sports anime that will be replacing this one. But I want to give a shout out to Alex Cornejo, to Anime Annie, to Be Happy, to Bryant Reed, to Dana, to Damage3245, to Danger Zone, to Alexandra Q, to Devorin, as well as Destiny Marie, Ichu Eric, Fisho, Ghostly Turnip, El Freya, Liam Polzel, as well as Lyndon, Matthew Palfinier, Murphy, Adam Perez, Nicholas, Nago, Sunspots, Shimuyama, Trails, Starman AA, and Translucent Men. Thank you all so much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. So yeah, let's dive into these comments before we get started with this episode. Most of these comments are from episodes 7 and 8, because like I said, episode 9 is about to come out on Patreon. And then when I record episode 11, I'll have comments for 9 and 8. And so even afterwards, I will still answer your comments for episodes 10 and 11. So don't worry. And by that point, I will already have watched, so we can talk without fear of spoilers. Alexandra Q says for episode 7, Ryu's son, Kaio's coach, I think his name is Taku, saying that Butterfly Joe was his hero over his own father is quite the statement. Like, sure, he talks benevolently about him to Yuri. He is her grandfather, after all, but he doesn't seem to really like him that much. Yeah, the whole Cosmo's whole family, that drama. Oh my gosh. And then in episode 8, Alexander Q says Wenge got involved with his team and trained them. Sure, he knows they aren't exceptional or anything, but he did help them by being there to become better players. His cheer and support did a difference in them, something that sadly Koizumi didn't truly do with Katase. Kong telling that one teammate who knows if there is talent buried in him made me glow with pride for him and also smile so hard. Kong's team, Kong Wenge's team, is just pure joy. They're magical. I love them. They are everything to me. Everybody rags on Koizumi so much in this show in the comments section, and I empathize with Koizumi as a coach myself, so I feel for him. My thing is, I will note this. Kong Wenge's team, I think y'all give Katase a little too much credit sometimes, because from what the show has given us, Wingay's team, from the get-go, from the opening scenes, they were practicing ping pong. They were going at it. They thought they were really good. And then Wingay came in and was like, you guys are shit, and showed them all up. But they were training pretty hardcore from the start. Maybe not as hardcore as Kaio or as the team that Peco ends up going to, by all means. They weren't training as hard as them, no. But they were training, whereas Oda and them, the show literally shows us Oda and them being like, well, we're not going to run. We're not going to do that. So I think sometimes the fandom gives Katase a little more credit than they deserve, because from my perspective, I see them and I go, well, you guys didn't even want to try what Koizumi was doing with Smile. You said that was too hard. We don't want to do that. And you scapegoated Smile by saying, well, Smile's the chosen one and we can't live up to it. But I'm like, but you didn't even try. I think Wingay's team would have tried. So I'm going to defend Koizumi till the very end. Now, do I think Koizumi could have tried harder like Wingay did? Oh, yeah, for sure. But do I think he completely abandoned his team and his team, you know, were trying just as hard as the other teams we've seen? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. But anyway, I do love Wingay's team so much. I think that they are just the best thing since sliced bread. I love their camaraderie. They're just so precious. Killer Queen with episode 7 says the worst part about Kazama's family backstory is the fact that things like this happen in real life. It's no surprise why Kazama is the way that he is, and it's quite depressing. It's a big contrast with Peco, who I'd say plays ping pong out of pure enjoyment and passion for the game. His dream is to become the best. Even his family situation is much better too. I hadn't even thought about that until Killer Queen brought this up. But yeah, we see in episode 7, like Pico's family smiling and his siblings there and everybody's having like a kumbaya moment. And then you cut to Kazama's family and it's just this drama and all of this melancholy. And so I agree. Kazama's story is so relatable to, I think, so many people, but it also is something that can really happen. And it shows just how important like family background and support really is. And then you look at Smile, who doesn't seem to have a lot of that. So I think it's interesting. Richard K. Chang for episode 7 says, I think there's some fan translations that are weaker than the original intention. Kazama says there are no heroes instead of I have no hero, which seems a bit on the nose to me. And Obaba says, if you won't give him any loving, get out of his life. So those were 2 things in episode 7. I do think that there are no heroes line fits better for Kazama than the I have no hero, because Kazama doesn't really, it's weird. He does things personally that come across as selfish, but then they're really for other people and not for himself. So there's that. Richard K. Chang also says, I'd like to give an alternate interpretation of the Smile, Koizumi, and Kazama dynamic that I believe episode 7 brings to light. And I'm like, yes, let's do that. Based on the revelations of episode 7, I believe Smile was actually sincere about not caring about winning, and only goes along with everything because it connects him to people like Peco and Koizumi, which is why his actions and choices always involve accommodating what matters to them rather than himself, which is another connection to Kazama. Oddly enough, right? A habit we see in general. I quietly do as I'm told, like a robot. Smile has absentee parents, and Koizumi is the only father figure he has, which is why Smile feels so hurt and offended when Koizumi abandons him for the sake of improving his chances of reaching the top, which we talked about in the discussion, something I don't think he cares about outside of pleasing Koizumi. I believe this is also why Obaba warns Koizumi that he's inadvertently playing with Smile's emotions. Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and we talked about that in the discussion for that episode, I'm pretty sure, but I do agree that it is interesting that Smile wants those connections to people like Peco and Koizumi because he doesn't really have anything outside of ping pong for himself, whereas Kazama, I don't think it's the fact that Kazama doesn't have things outside of ping pong. It's just that Kazama's kind of depending on ping pong to get him out of the potential failure that his entire family is set up behind him and underneath him, which is a totally different thing. So it's so fascinating, the character dynamics. Someone in the Discord asked if I would pick my favorite storyline of the 4 when we get to the end. And yeah, ranking them is going to be insane. I might have to do a tier for episode 11 to rank the storylines and the coaches and everything. A character tier might have to happen for ping pong because it's kind of worth it. And then Gigi Goose for episode 8 says, Pico's talent has been foreshadowed in a couple points before this. This is really cool. Obaba said how he was growing in the middle of a match doing new stuff. Another example, which would be around episode 5, was when he was at the beach, Peco saw someone surf, and he copied what the guy did and did it even better. I forgot about that and was like, oh my God, that's so true. It goes to show how talented Peco is. So when he puts in the work, he can take down elite players such as Kong. That was what was so, I think what was so frustrating at the start of this series is when you see someone with talent that isn't putting in the work and you're like, you're just wasting your potential. And the funny thing was, it was kind of a bait and switch. They did that to us with 2 people instead of 1. At the beginning, you think it's just Smile who's not living up to his potential. But then you realize, no, it's not just Smile, but it's also Peco. And now what's so crazy is that Peco has turned around. He is showing us his potential, and it's just wild. I'm just in awe. I'm just enamored, and I love every single second of it. But yeah, so I've talked for nearly 11 minutes. Y'all, it's time. I'm not ready for this episode. I just am not. I don't want this to be the penultimate episode, but at the same time, I want to watch it so badly. It's such a conundrum. It's such a weird paradox to be living in, but anyway, I'm sure with episode 11, there's going to be so much to talk about, but we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive into episode 10 of Ping Pong. Holy cow. And we are going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And I'll see you all on the other side. Oh my God, y'all. Let me tell you. I'm never prepared for these episodes. Ever. And you know what? I get greedy because I feel like in some sports anime, I'm not saying sports anime are bloated. I'm not saying that they are. I've watched sports anime on this channel that have been 23 episodes long. I've watched sports anime that have been 4 seasons in a movie long. I've watched sports anime that have been 3 seasons in a movie. I've watched sports anime that have been nearly 200 episodes on this channel. And it's not that sports anime sometimes feel bloated, but when you have like a very long running anime and you have to put all the things in it, there are some episodes where matches feel like they maybe go on longer than they need to. But this series, it makes you greedy. It makes you want more. And it makes you want the match to go on longer. But they trim all of the fat out. There is no fat. It is the essentials, but it is just like the meat and potatoes. It's everything that makes it so good. And we're going to play a drinking game with this episode. So you know what? If you want to play along, you can. What this is called is we're going to draw a little shot glass here with our little elixir in it. And this is called a drink. I would take a shot. You can do whatever you want. Drink every time there is a reference to flying. In this episode, we're going to see how quickly we go to the ER for alcohol poisoning. Or if you are sober, you can take drinks we're going to see how long it takes before you have to go to the bathroom, because you can take, shots of pomegranate juice or whatever you need to. But we're going to have a little tally counter right over here. We're going to tally this up right here. References to flying. We're going to tally that up right here off to the side. I have a feeling it's going to be really terrible in a good way, of course. But the metaphor of flying, the metaphor of it representing his father and his father's grasp on the mortal coil and his depression, and likening his troubles to being trapped on Earth and not able to soar. It was so powerful and well done in this episode. Y'all. Y'all. So let's talk about Yuri. Yuri's going to London. Yuri finally decides, she's like, I'm going to London to go to art school, and that's all there is to it. And you know what? The romantic in me wanted her and Sonata to be a thing. But the person in me that wants Yuri to get away from this drama-filled family and go and take on her dreams is super proud of Yuri. I'm excited that she's going and just saying, screw it, I'm gonna leave. I'm glad she was able to finally break away from Kazama. Not because Kazama is a bad person. Kazama is amazing. I love him. But it was very clear that Kazama was not gonna treat her like a girlfriend, for one. But two, he has his own growing up to do and his own stuff to take care of, and she's got to take care of her. So kudos to her for just doing her own thing. I wanted to talk about the dad though, because he's like, I, could see you off after the preliminaries. And she's like, oh, well, no, you'd only cry, wouldn't you? And you've got to, besides, you've got to go back to practicing after the prelims. And then it shows him like screaming and yelling. I think that it's when we get to those points of him yelling into the void, I think that's him expressing his actual emotion, because Taku and Kazama have both established that in their family there is no crying in ping pong, and there's no crying in the Kazama family, so none of that. So it's so weird that they don't get to express their emotions properly. And so every time Taku has that moment like he did with Yuri where he's just screaming out, I feel like that's his frustration, his emotion, what he wants to say but has repressed because of how he's been trained and disciplined since youth. And that's just him trying to let that emotion out, but Yuri doesn't see it. That's my take on it, that it's him trying to express that emotion because he doesn't say anything. And when she said, you would cry about it, his family's taught him not to cry. So I feel like in that moment, he wants to tell her things, but he has to hold back. And he's like, well, your mother will miss you. He does it. He does that instead. Instead, he says, well, your mom will miss you, rather than saying that he'll miss her. I think he's trying to yell out that he loves her and he cares about her, but he can't say that because that would be vulnerability. And this family is not about masculine vulnerability, let me tell you. And then he says, when are you coming home? And she says, once I've succeeded. Which, this family is competitive, if anything, and it's got ambition. And she says, you come see me instead. And he's like, well, I don't want to go overseas. And she says, well, he says, where did you get the money? And she said, I sold my car. And she's like, that's it. And then he said, did you tell Ryuichi? And she said, no, he'll be fine. He'll be okay. I feel like she thinks, no one's been waiting for a hero as long as he has. So I think that that's important to establish with this episode. And I'm glad that translation was pointed out, because from episode 7, Cosmo's saying not that he doesn't need a hero, but that he says there are no heroes. And the sad part about that is the underlying message of that there are no heroes line is that no one's ever come to be my hero. And it's insanely sad that he says that. But in this, Peco becomes his hero. Peco becomes his hero and thus enables him to become a hero himself, potentially. I know we saw his wings get kind of cut short in the match, but I think that what Peco has done is shown Kazama that ping pong is fun. And once you let go of all the pressures from everyone else and just accept that if you like it, that's all you need, that you can be your own hero. And even though Ryuichi wasn't able to defeat Peco, or at least we don't think he was, we didn't find out for sure, but I'm pretty sure that Peco won. We'll find out next episode. But I feel like even though Peco, he was his hero, it also showed him how he could be a hero himself. And Yuri is aware of that. She's like, he needs his own hero. And she's like, I can't be that for him. But also, I love the fact that she sold the car. The car being this status symbol, the car being this thing that Sonata was jealous of her for. The car, I love, she got one more joyride out of it. And then she sold it off so she could have her dream. Girl, do it. That's so awesome. I love it. I'm sure one will appear before him eventually. I also love the body language of the dad. The dad is all hunched over and kind of in this like submissive position compared to her, which the men in that family, that grandfather has done a number on every man in that family and their mental state. No wonder Taku views Joe as the hero for him rather than his own father, based on that mentality. No wonder he thinks that, right? So then we cut back to the volleyball game. Volleyball game! Oh my god, ping pong game! I was thinking of Oikawa in this. I'm sorry. I was thinking of Oikawa at one point with Kazama, oddly enough, and not Peco, but we'll cut that. But yeah, back to the ping pong game. Got Haikyuu on the brain, clearly. And we have Peco saying, to protect the peace on Earth, I come from the planet Ping Pong. I'm the invincible hero of justice. And you just say my name 3 times. I love that Smile just looks at him, sort of, you know, doesn't know what to think about him in that moment. He says, just say my name. And I like that the whole thing was, we don't know from the childhood flashback what his name is, but we assume based on this episode that it's just Pico's name, Hoshino. So I love it. I love it so much. And the part where they exchange paddles was amazing because Peco hands his paddle to Kazama. Kazama looks at it and he sees that it's weird. That lower panel with Pico's giant smile was creepy as F. What the fudge, Peco? That was terrifying. Like, he's like, look at my paddle. Isn't it cool? Look what I'm going to do with it. And it's a reverse grip. Yeah. Who knew going into this? Like, I went straight to Donkey and bought it so I could play with you. I love that Pico's like, like, he's like, I'm going to play just like you want me to, huh? Oh my God. What a cheeky kid. A reverse pinhold grip to twirl it around when he shoots. I love it. I love it. Pico's strength is offensive and he plays close to the table. Which is interesting because I feel like Smile doesn't play close to the table. He backs off a little bit, so which fits his personality more. But I guess we'll see next episode if they face each other in the final. I love how calm and confident Peco is, but there is this definite, like, I don't know, do we count the plane, the bags being packed up as flying? I don't think we do yet. But I love the idea that Peco represents just this joy and love of ping pong that is free of pressure and responsibility. I love that because it's the exact opposite of Kazama. Kazama's entire play is steeped in responsibility and duty and obligation. And it doesn't matter whether he likes it or not. Kazama, honestly, this is the series that replaced March Comes In Like a Lion. The main character, Ray, Kazama kind of reminded me a lot of Ray in this episode, oddly enough, which is so weird because I've compared Smile to him before. But without spoiling much with March Comes In Like a Lion, the idea of Kazama's obligation and that that ping pong started out as something fun with his father and then transitioned because of another family member into something of obligation, duty, and did not have the fun it did before. It reads a little bit like March Comes In Like a Lion. So if you like ping pong, you should watch March Comes In Like a Lion because there's some very similar themes going on. But yeah, I love this exchange of the paddles and them looking it over. This is why I love sports anime so much, by the way. This is why I love it so much because I would never in 1,000 years watch a ping pong game and have this much excitement, nor would I even consider it as a sport, which is sad, but true. I just wouldn't. So without series like these, I would never have given ping pong a chance. I would have never have considered it to be even remotely an athletic event that is of the same caliber as others that I've seen. But then you get into this series and you see the training that they do. You see like all of the mental and physical stamina they have to have. You see the intricacies with the paddle. It's like the human race is such an interesting, it's one of those moments you're like, the human race is so interesting that we've cultivated such an activity that gets so finite and specific in the piece of wood we're hitting the balls with. It just blows my mind every time. And that's why I love sports anime, because you don't even know about this until you get into it. And then you're like, damn, yeah, this is crazy, right? Just wild. Just wild. So you could get a reverse pinhold grip and switch sides easily. He can switch between the springy rubber and one that's good for a countering spin, and you can use forehands and backhands. When he hit the ball with his backhand without even looking, what the fudge? These players. His opponent should be frustrated by how difficult it will be to return his ever-changing drives. It's not easy, but Peco mastered it quickly. Yeah, that's Peco's advantage. Peco's advantage is that he learns insanely quick and is like all out energy. And not just that all out energy, but he's just free of pressure and stress. The part that Obama was getting worried was when Peco was thinking too much. Obama was like, Peco, don't think. You overthink and you're not smart enough to figure it out. She's like, you need to be instinctual. You need to play off of emotion and being happy and living in the moment. The moment you start to try to analyze your opponent, it all goes downhill. Peco and Smile are total opposites in that regard, whereas Smile rationalizes and calculates and soaks in the data and then runs it through like a robot and figures out what to do. Peco is just this bouncing organic sun that just absorbs and then gives it back. And it's so good. It's just, it's so amazing. So Kazama kind of looks down on Peco and says, don't think that this toy is going to help you against me. And Pico's like, well, my knee's not getting any better. So let's get this show on the road. And he says, but you're high up. And then we see our first bird reference. I'm only going to do like one per scene. But we have to take a shot because we're only 2.5 minutes in and we got this bird reference going on. He's like, you're so high up, I'll climb on your back. The higher you go, the higher I'll fly alongside you. I like this idea that Peco represents matching him. Like, if you go high up, Kazama, I will match you. And honestly, if we're talking about sports anime, it reminds me a little bit of Kuroko's Basketball, because there's a main character in that series where, he faces these really hard opponents and you as the audience are like, oh, he's going to get discouraged and not think that he can win. But no, he likes facing difficult opponents because that just means it's more of a challenge and he gets to like rise to the occasion and be more and more ambitious. And that's kind of where Peco is as well. He's kind of the same way. He's like, I'm going to fly. And Kazama says, you sound like somebody who needs medication. That part was hilarious. People can't fly. It's impossible. And Peco says, well, are you saying I'm sick in the head? That was such a dark joke. That was such a dark reference because what Peco does not know is that his dad potentially committed suicide because he couldn't fly like a bird. And Peco just made a dark reference to it without realizing it. Insane. But yeah, and so they're like, all right, Kazama, you can do it. What I liked about it, he's like, if people could fly, and he thinks back to his dad before the intro. What I liked about this game was that I liked seeing either of them on either side of the net from the very beginning and just seeing that pressure. And Pico's like, damn, this is bad. I can't let myself get swallowed up or it's over. If I get scared, I'll lose. If I lose my nerve, I'm dead. And so in order to get to Smile, he's like, I gotta just let that go. I love the montage. I love that Smile was interesting because Smile the whole time was playing off in the wings. Put Smile down here. Smile is waiting, but also having faith that Peco would win, which is so interesting to me. There was a part of me that wanted Smile to go and cheer on Peco, but that's not what I think. That's not what Smile wanted to do. It's not in Smile's wheelhouse to cheer people on. He's just not that type of person. But I also think Smile is like, no, I'm going to give, Peco, I want Peco to work and be the hero to come save me. So I'm going to wait off of here in the wings and wait for him. I'm very torn because a part of me wanted him to go out and support Peco because for a hot second, I thought Peco was going to lose. And I would have been like, why didn't you go support him? But there's another part of me that just loves the faith that Smile has in Peco, knowing that he's going to come save him. I don't know. There's also a part of me with Smile that thinks, you always rely on Peco to come save you. You can be a hero too. You're already a robot. And Peco kind of looks like a robot in your vision of him. So can't you grow wings and fly alongside him and you both be heroes for each other? I don't know. I want Smile to become Peco's hero, but I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know. We'll see next episode. But one thing I really liked about this game was that it was a legit ping pong game. They were legit playing. There wasn't a lot of frills. Like, there were some really cool stylistic things they did with the close-ups of Kazama and Peco, but throughout, it really was just them playing back and forth. And I know some people would probably criticize it because it was just a back and forth thing, but it was so intense and it felt real. This game felt real. Like, I felt like I was in the gym at some points during the game watching it, and I was so enamored. I didn't have much to say during the reaction because I was like, what can you say? It's art. It's real. It's art. It's beautiful. I loved it. I love how intense Kazama gets through it. Also, something interesting is Kazama was wearing the shoes. Kazama put on the shoes, which originally he said he didn't want to put on the shoes, but then he did. And so there is that question of, did Kazama put on the shoes to represent his family? And was it part of the facade of him saving face, trying to seem like he was dedicated and wasn't being thrown off? I don't know. Was it his last ditch effort to recognize with his family? Also, Wingay wearing the sunglasses in the gym, too cool for school. There is no reason to be wearing them in the gym unless you've got pre-onset glaucoma. But yeah, I was just like, I love Wingay is just so cool for school. He's like, I'm going to wear these sunglasses inside. And Sakuma sitting there just watching the game like, damn. I feel like Sakuma's torn between a rock and a hard place because he kind of loves both of these people, right? And the team's watching to see what Kazama and Peco will do. Kazama got a little cocky there for a second where he was bouncing the ball up on the paddle before he hit it, like just kind of taunting Peco. It was interesting. Very interesting. And then he stares down. I love that shot of Peco staring through the net. That part was really, really good. But yeah, I got really worried the first time around when we had Kazama beating Peco in that first game, because I thought, oh, this isn't good. That was a really short game. We're barely into this episode, and he beat him in game 1. I don't know. Then we get the sight of the gym, and the gym slowly transforms into this demolished city. And then we cut to Smile as the just giant robot all by his lonesome, waiting for Peco to come get him. We see him on top of the hill, playing the game by himself. I love the perspective of the stairs. In real life, the stairs are not that steep and there's not that many of them. But the perspective of it makes Smile look like he's a princess at the top of a tower that Peco has to come rescue. Did I ship Peco and Smile a little bit in this episode? I kind of did. I kind of could also understand if you ship Kazama and Peco a little bit in this episode. Pico's getting all the game. Pico is getting a harem started. He's got Sakuma over here. He's got Kong over here. I don't ship a lot in this series because I do think they're all genuinely just friends. But if you really did want to ship, you could make a case for it. I do think, honestly, because I love shipping in sports anime, there are some series I've watched, I'm like, oh, you can ship hardcore. This series, I do get bro friend vibes for the most part. Sakuma and Peco, another member of the harem, of the Peco harem, of the hero harem. Sakuma and Peco, I can kind of see it, but honestly, they all give off just bro vibes. I don't get a lot of romantic vibes in this series. It's mostly bro vibes. With Sonata and Yuri, there could have been, but she's left for London. So what can we do? But if you wanted to ship them, I wouldn't blame you. I wouldn't throw you out of bed for eating crackers. So then Koizumi shows up to talk to Smile and tells him Hoshino's playing and says, aren't you going to go support him? But Smile says no. He says, do you believe in heroes? And then Koizumi's like, what do you mean? And he says, he always appears when I'm in a pinch. No matter how trapped I am, he comes to save me. And he's going to do it this time. And that's when the coach says, do you believe in that hero, Mr. Tsukimoto? And Smile says, yes, I've been waiting for him for a long time now. Which is really sad that Smile has felt like he's needed a hero, but he didn't know how to say it until Peco, and now he knows Pico's on his way. It's kind of sad, but it's like, damn, okay. All right. He's returning today. And then Enter the hero, enter the hero, enter the hero. I do worry because in this episode, Peco did not make much reference to his knee. He talked about it feeling bad, but he's like, it's fine. Don't focus on my knee. Focus on me. Everything's great. And he started to really get like bouncy and energetic and running around this episode. And all I could think of is, you're going to wreck that knee for when you face Smile. You're going to wreck it. And I don't think that Peco cares at this point, which for him wanting to be a professional, I'm like, what are we going to do about that? But it's a knee injury, so I don't think it's going to debilitate him from playing. Even if he can't make nationals this year, he might be able to play in the future, like in years to come. But we don't know that for sure yet. But I do think it's interesting that he just doesn't want to draw any attention to it this game. But next game, I don't know how that's going to go. I don't think he can keep dodging it forever. I do love how serious he is, though. He's like, I'm the hero. It's me. And then he says, my name is Yutaka Hoshino. Remember that name. I love it. I love him pulling off the mask. And then as he pulls off the mask, I love the purple and gold contrast. We see him pull off the mask and throw it aside. And then just as he says that, Kazama slices the ball past him. And we see the racket on the table with blood on the handle. And it's like, oh my God. And it's going back to Kaio's training and him like practicing till his hand bleeds. And it's almost as if Kazama is challenging Peco by saying, oh, you have this idealism of being this hero. I have the literal blood on my hands from practicing so hard. He's like, your idealism is not going to compare to what I've put into this. It's wild. I love this episode so much. It is insane. Yeah, because that's his racket. And then we have the grandpa. So the grandpa has all of this, which keep in mind, the grandpa only got to this point because Koizumi threw the game. Koizumi threw the match that allowed him to win and move on and win nationals. So that was the trajectory. So there is that. So we have the idea from Kazama, the anguish of invincibility. The anguish of invincibility. This montage was insane. And then says the pain of praise, because then we see Kazama there. The pain of praise. And then he says, the pressure of burdens. Why do they all have puppies? They have medals and puppies. Were they all given stuffed animals as prizes, or is that supposed to be just abstract? The pressure of burdens. We're going to talk about these here in a hot second. The pressure of burdens. And then the isolation and agony, which is him in the bathroom next to the toilet. Like thinking about what he's done. And then eventually you'll feel all the hard work is pointless and victory is fruitless. But you cannot let your doubt stop you. Peco. And then they say Peco's in trouble. I thought this was interesting because the stuff that Kazama talks about is sort of what I feel like Smile has been afraid of and what Smile has been avoiding in his own path with Ping Pong. That the anguish of invincibility and the pain of praise is sort of what we've seen Smile go through in this series, and the pressure of burden and the isolation and agony. To a sense, Smile has felt all of these things. Now, whether he's let it connect to him as much as Kazama is a debatable subject, but there has been that, Smile being called the robot the entire time ties to that, anguish of invincibility. What I think is interesting is that for Pico's like, yeah, I failed. I got my ass kicked by Kong. And then I got my ass kicked by Sakuma. So Peco did not have that invincibility. He was yelled at because he was being lazy, so he didn't have that pain of praise. That burden of pressure wasn't there for him because people were like, are you going to play or get out? And then that whole isolation and agony, he was always around Smile and always around Sakuma and others, so he didn't really have any isolation and agony. So Peco went through the gauntlet, and by going through the gauntlet, he avoided all of these things that or Kazama and Smile have had to go through. So I love that comparison is there. I think that's so interesting. Weakness brings defeat. And then he's like, I have to get stronger and stronger. And I have to bring victory. And then we have the one guy telling Peco to use the reverse side and go ahead and use it. But it doesn't work. And I love Kazama yelling at him, hey, kid. And I'm like, you all are the same age. Don't yell at him, hey, kid. And then he grows like he grew when he faced Wingay and says, don't think that stopgap skill of yours will work against me. Like, this is the most emotional we've ever seen Kazama in this series. It's unpleasant. And there's like this dominating stance where his balls are in Peco's face. And I'm not talking about the ping pong ones. He's like, damn it. What am I going to do? You're a cool guy, dragon. I like he says dragon in English. Whenever Peco says, I love you, that is the thing. Him saying, I love you, because he says that to Obaba, is that you are a worthy opponent. I mean, if you're going to ship, you can take that to a whole nother level. But to me, even as I'm like one of the bigger shippers that I know of, I don't feel like that was him being romantically saying I love you, but rather he's like, you are a worthy opponent. I love that you're giving me a challenge, right? Because he says that with Obaba too, right? And then they just play back and forth, and it's just wild. And that's when Obaba starts to say, like, you're overthinking it. You're overthinking it. You're letting... I think one of Peco's strengths in this match and in this tournament has been that he's not been worried. He's been kind of carefree and like, I'm just playing ping pong for fun. Let's just have a good time. I got to get to smile now. But when he starts to overthink and start to feel pressure and let that get to him, Obaba's like, that's not what you want to do, because that's what limits you. That's what slows you down and stops you. And it's not until Peco loses that first match and, gets through and realizes, oh, I'm just playing for fun. Let's have fun with this. Then the tides start to turn. Also, a second reference is when Kazama's internal monologue is climbing the hill, and we get to see Kazama in full booty form. I will say, Kazama, Adonis, like just carved out of marble over here. But he's talking about climbing the steep mountain one step at a time. An endless abyss stretches outward below you, which again, so much like March Comes In Like a Lion. So many references back to that. And the idea of you must keep climbing. And then connecting that to his dad on the stairs. That was insane. That was insane that Kazama following the same path his father did of climbing those stairs up the mountain. You can't turn back down or you'll fall to your death. Oh, that's insane. Also, the metaphor of climbing the ladder and below you is the abyss of death is kind of in March Comes In Like a Lion, but there's not a character that just flies over the hurdle in March Comes In Like a Lion. So I think that's an interesting thing to note. But yeah, and then him going back through and talking about the birds. So yeah, we see the birds again in that scene, saying, I wish I'd been born a bird. All right. I'll tally that in. And then we had to see him as a kid after Kazama's dad dies, and he's wearing a freaking Poseidon shirt for the branding after his father's death. And they're like, don't cry in front of people. Defeat means death. And like to compromise is to cut off your own arm. And then we see like him literally standing in front of the toilet like he does now as a young adult. Truth is only found in victory. And they're like, you need to win for your family. Yeah, him just standing there with the paddle, doing it for the family, for Kaio, for Poseidon. But the thing about it is, in that speech and all of those things that Ryuichi is supposed to be playing for the family, for the company, for the team, no one tells him to play for himself. He's just told to do it for other people. But they're like, don't do it for yourself, because why would you do that? And so the idea of Kazama needing a hero that tells him to play for himself. And Yuri kind of got to that as well. Yuri was kind of like, what are you doing this for at some point? But Peco really drives it home in this episode. And then this part here, where they go to where they're at the restaurant, and they're with the kids, and they're like, and the one kid, when they're at the restaurant, says, I want Carpaccio. And I'm like, I don't know if that's Yuri or when they're kids. And they're like, oh, it looks reasonably priced. We could get that. And then the mom kind of like looks downward, and Kazama says, I want udon. And the other ladies kind of laugh. And then the udon, I'm guessing, is the most expensive thing on the menu. But the other ladies are like, oh, well, there's no helping it now. Ryu-chan won't listen once he gets going. And the mom says, let's have udon. And the fact that the mom was willing to give him the food that he wanted, despite her kind of, you could see in her body language that she probably didn't have the money for it that they needed to spend, but she didn't want him to not have it. Oh. And then we go back to the dad dying, and they're like, oh, well, the garlands are cheap. Nobody will buy those. So get those because they're cheap and they'll look nice for this funeral. And then them telling the mom that at a time like this, you get sick because your husband's a terrible salesman. And Kazama almost like went up and punched him, and she stopped him. Oh, there are certain rules we have to uphold. And then the voice of the grandfather telling him that nobody's going to help him. No one's going to save him. If you don't want to be bullied, get stronger. That is just so hard. I feel so bad for Kazama. And he just needed a hero. He needed somebody in his life to be a hero for him. And his own family wasn't going to do it. It's heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking. And then that's where Peco comes in. To like actually treat him like an opponent. And the thing is, Pico's not scared of him. Everyone else shakes in their boots around Kazama because of his family and his reputation. But Peco is like one of the first people to play him that just wants to have fun and play ping pong. And he's like, let's just have a game and have fun. You know, and not treat Kazama like this monster. And then Kazama says, what's wrong, hero? What's wrong? You're a hero, aren't you? Roll credits. I like the one referee's like, whoa, now there. Get a little emotional there, sir. And even the team's like, you know, Kazama never gets this emotional. And he says, aren't you going to fly? Aren't you going to save everyone? Well, we mentioned fly, so we might as well do that. But Kazama's thing is like, you know, no one saved me. Are you just words? Are you just hot air? Who are you going to save? And I like that Peco goes, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Ah! He's like, I'm a hero. I'll save anybody. I'm not picky. I mean, I'm going to save Smile, but I'm going to save y'all too. So it's fine. I love that. And then Wenge is like, I don't know what's going on or what any of this means. But, and then I like that Obaba's like, okay, Peco has incurred the boss's wrath. But Obaba knows that Peco likes being challenged. He likes a challenge, and he's just stubborn enough he can't turn away from it. Mm-hmm. And so then they go again. It's inevitable. And then the idea that table tennis only brings pain. This idea of pain versus pleasure. Which has been kind of hinted at throughout the series. When Yuri is imagining them walking around in episode 6, I believe, when she's imagining them walking around during the Christmas episode, and then she goes back and he's training in the gym instead of going with her. I mean, that is a decision that Kazama makes to choose pain over pleasure. Whenever Sonata gets onto him, because he could be dating Yuri and having the time of his life, but instead he's just in a dungeon pelting himself with ping pong balls, it's choosing pain over pleasure. And here you have the idea that ping pong is just pain. It is a duty of pain, and that there is no pleasure for him with it. When Sonata, he, once he thinks that, Yuri and Kazama are going out and dating and all of this, but instead he's like, completely avoiding her and just miserably suffering in a dungeon getting pelted with ping pongs. It's choosing pain over pleasure. So, and then you have Peco come in, who has chosen to view ping pong as pleasure and not pain. And that, there's a way you can be a hero and enjoy the game. It's so good to see it go down that way. And he's like, all right. Pico's like, I'm going to do it. I love Oda saying, do your best. Like, Oda's like, hey, go at it. Hey, we haven't really really talked a lot in this series, but give it your best shot, right? And Pico's like, oh, don't worry. I'm going to do that. But Obaba's like, he's shriveled completely. And that's when there's that song, the hero's song that we come to find out that Smile hums, the little hero's song that he made up as a kid, signaling when the hero would arrive. There definitely is a neurodivergent angle with Smile that I've thought about the entire series. Just the way Smile acts, it has a neurodivergent kind of spectrum feel to it based on people that I know that are similar to Smile in this series. And I feel like Peco knows that. But what I love about it is Peco doesn't question it. He doesn't think it's weird. He doesn't like treat Smile any different. He just accepts that that's a sign. That's when I need to come and help him whenever I hear this humming. I love it. I also love the fact that Kazama, they do the thing, which is so interesting, where Cosmo's like, is your knee hurting you? And Peco goes, well, let me win if you're so worried about it. You know, he's just like playing it off like, no, it's fine. Everything's good. I don't know, assuming that Peco has won this game, I don't know how that's going to go down with Smile next episode. And if Smile's going to go easy on him. That is one thing that Kong didn't go easy on him. And it's like, it's all, I talked about it last week. It's all going to come back around to that. And so we shall see. But he's like, don't ask if you're not going to go easy on me. And then I love that Obaba's like, don't use your head, Peco. I love that in this series, Obaba's like, you're not smart enough. It's just going to make you overthink things. You're just run on instinct. Be Luffy from One Piece. And he kind of does. He kind of becomes him in this game. And I kind of love it. It's kind of amazing. But the montage of everybody watching all of the action, it's great. And Peco starts to get into, he's like, he's strong. I can't attack fast since he keeps pulling me away from the table. What should I do? And then he hears the song. And I love that it's Smile being like, who are you up against? It's like the embodiment of table tennis. And he says, well, when you're playing, time flies and you're having fun. You'll forget all kinds of injuries when you play. And I love that there's that little sparkle moment where like it heals his knee and he's like, you're fine. He's like, don't worry about anything. Let all of your worries go. You said that the stronger your opponent is, the higher you can fly. And then we have our next bird. Next bird in the air. Da-da, da-da, da-da. And then Pico's like, okay. And we see the train. He says, can you fly? And he says, yes. And I'm going to treat the robot flying as a flying metaphor as well. Because the hero is showing up, right? Up until 13 minutes into this episode, the flying metaphors weren't very prevalent, but at this point you're probably going to want to call 911 now to let the ambulance have time to get to you. Because now Peco says, you know what? I also love when they show him and Smile as kids and Smile's just sitting there doing this with the racket and you can see Peco instantly flipping his hand back and forth, which is what he does in this episode. That is just so clever. I love it. And he says, it's the hero song. I wrote it. Oh, Smile! Our sweet baby. And Peco goes, okay. And he starts laughing like, all right, let's do this. I like Kazama kind of smiling too. Kazama smiling is terrifying. But I love it. But I love Kazama's like, okay, you're not giving up. I'm smiling because you're not giving up either. We're going to keep playing this game. And Obaba's like, okay. I love that Wingay at this point is like, I have no clue what's going on. I've just accepted this is weird, but I want to keep watching. And then him turning around, like Luffy from One Piece, being like, hey, Dragon, let me tell you something. I love the way his face is drawn. It's so funny. And then he says, table tennis is damn fun. And I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to be your hero. I can be your hero, baby. And he says, I can fly. I am shining and full of energy. My impulses are firing, my retentive memory. And Koizumi's like, holy shit. The speed of sound, the speed of light. And then Obaba's like, all right, boy. That's what we're talking about. That's what we need. Don't think it, just be it. Like Rocky Horror and go through this, y'all. I love it. I love the line work gets more thick and gritty as well. Like once he starts getting all full of energy. Look how full of energy I am. It's so good. It's just so wild and just bonkers. And I love it so much, this comeback. And him running back and forth and just firing on all cylinders. It's great. I love it so much. And he wins the game back. That montage was just beautiful. It was epic. It was awesome. You could take screenshots of all these moments. I like Sakuma's just casually watching like, okay, the game's not over. We're tied 1-1. It's so good. Yes, please. Game goes to Hoshino. So yes, they keep playing, and then Obaba's like, this is the way that we do it. You could take so many screenshots of this, which I probably will. I also love when he turns around and he's like, yeah, I tied it 5-5. This is a game. I love it. And I love that Wenge with the glasses on is like, okay, we're doing a good game here. It must be hard for Kazama. Hoshino's play doesn't conform to a style, so you can't really predict it. You can't help how much he loves table tennis. At the very least, Kong's like, I know what that's like. It's so good. It's so good, the back and forth between them. And then I love the one guy's like, when did Peco learn to slice like that? And Obaba's like, well, Kazama panicked and hit it hard. And then we see the bird again. Deep. And the idea of Kazama struggling to climb the mountain when Peco is just flying, that metaphor of Kazama, you're overworking yourself. You're not doing this the right way. You're climbing this mountain and treating it as if it's like this chasm that you'll fall to your death if you don't succeed. But you got to let go of all of that. You got to let go of those pressures. You got to let go of that burden. And you've just got to do table tennis because it's fun. And the moment you do that, you'll free yourself. And that message is so damn good. The way they portrayed it and him trying to reach for the bird. Oh, yeah. And then as he's flying away, seeing him in the bathroom and seeing like and the fact of when we see Peco reaching down to him, that moment is just like, I'm your hero. Here, I'll help you fly. Let me show you what it's like to play ping pong for fun without all the pressures of winning and being the champion of inner high or whatever. He's like, let me show you how much fun it is just to play ping pong because it's enjoyable. And him reaching out and him like reaching out for him and then him growing these wings to join him. It's beautiful, y'all. It's so damn good. And then I thought of Oikawa when he crashed over the one partition. I thought of that. But then he gets back up and he's smiling. Oh. And then showing him flying out of the bathroom. The bathroom that's like the source of his anxiety, his anguish, his isolation, and Peco giving him a hand to let him fly out of that. Shut up. And then him going away from it towards Peco in the sun. I love it so much. It's amazing, y'all. It's so damn good. But yeah, so they keep pairing back and forth, and everybody's just in awe of them. And then they're tied. And I love Sonata cheering him on. I love that Kazuma's team starts cheering him on because they get into it. Peco says not to worry about his knee. He's like, don't you worry about my knee. Don't you stop this game now and have pity on me. He's like, we're going to make this a match to remember. And then he says, I love you, dragon. And he goes, smooch. I love it. Where he's like, I love playing you. You're a hard opponent and I enjoy it. Oh, I did not expect to have these feelings for Peco and Kazama from episode 1. I just did not expect it to come full circle like this. And then we see Yuri getting the ticket for the airplane. And her looking back. As they keep playing, people are on their feet, like watching the game. Oh. And him saying, yeah, and then going back and forth back at it. Oh, it's so good, y'all. I love it. There's such a grit and such an energy and dynamic to all of it. It's amazing. And then 5-6, it's Kazama. And then I love that Wenge takes the glasses off to be like, oh, this match is worthy of me taking my glasses off. And then we see the flashback of Kazama and his dad. And his dad's teaching him to play. Saying, you're good at this. Aren't you having fun? and him smiling. Oh my God. But we don't get to see Ryuichi smiling. We only see the dad smiling in that moment. But yeah, they keep playing. The line work, everything is in these muted colors, and it's amazing. And then I love that Kazama shouts at him, shouts them all to shut up as he's in the moment. And then him smiling is terrifying, by the way. Kazama smiling like that is absolutely terrifying. Uh-huh. And I'm like, why is he smiling? And Taku being like Ryuichi, and then we get back to Peco, y'all. And then we see Yuri in her plane, taking off for London, with a smile on her face as she's doing her thing. I did not anticipate ping pong to have these plane flying metaphors. But Kazama talks about how he's having so much fun. His body is ordering him to move faster. I love it. I love that everything's nearly black and white now. It's just everything's muted, all the colors. And then talking about how Pico's moving ahead of him. Like everything gets to where it's just black and white. And we see the plane take off again. And as the plane takes off, everything goes in black and white. And we see the bird again. Oh man, another bird. Another bird as he looks up to it. Oh my God. I love the style of this final scene where time stops and him and Peco talk to one another. And he's like, no, nothing's wrong. I'm feeling great, really. And Pico's like, yeah, me too. It's match point, Dragon. He says, this is the end for me, hero. And then Pico's like, oh my. And he says, my wings have reached their limits. I love that basically is like, you're going to have to go on without me to face Smile. And he says, will you bring me here again? Now, at that moment where he says, will you bring me here again? Will you play me again? And will we come back to this same point? And Peco kind of like scratches his nose like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to play again like this. With my knee, I don't know. And Kazama goes, okay. All right, well, you've shown me what it's like. I feel either way, even if Peco never plays again, his love of the game and his love of ping pong and his just absolute joy in showing Kazama that there is a way to be good and successful while enjoying the game. I feel like that's what Kazama needed. He needed that hero to show him that and smile. And Peco was that for him. And him just smiling so serenely, and then he throws the ball up in the air, and then everybody's cheering. And he's like, they're ordering me to move faster. Faster and faster. And everybody's shouting, the hero is growing rapidly. He's gradually pulling ahead. He shows no impatience. And there's no need to be afraid. I love how serene Wenge looks in that one moment. And the person's like waving and smiling. This place is good. All right. And then it hits the side of his paddle. And the ball goes up in the air. This place is splendid. You were really cool, Dragon. Ah. And then the color starts to come back. And then we see the bird the last time. They can fly. People can fly. Oh my God. Amazing. Amazing. The metaphor, everything, the symbolism, everything. Ugh. Also, that would have required you to take 13 shots in this episode for every bird reference. Wee-oo, wee-oo, wee-oo. Everything about this episode, I loved it, which has been what I've been saying about the majority of this series. But it's been really good. And I'm assuming that we all can assume that Peco won. So then the question is, how much time is there going to be between Peco playing Smile in this game? What's going to happen? Is Pico's knee going to give out? How is he going to play Smile? What's going to happen now that he's reached him? I can't believe the season finale is next week. I can't believe that, y'all. It's not fair. It's not fair when you have an amazing show that has this much character development and this much symbolism in it, and it only lasts for that long. It's not fair at all, y'all. It's not fair at all. But I just loved this episode. It was so good. It was so good. And I can't wait to hear your thoughts down below. Next week, I'll do a character tier. Why not? And we'll do episode 11 and just see what happens. But in the meantime, I have no other words. This episode was amazing. And I'm going to be taking lots of screenshots to put on Patreon and the Discord. So get ready for that. But in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I will be back, if you can believe it, next week with the season series finale of Ping Pong. And I'll see you then. Bye.